The other day I was eating a sandwich. I know, so relatable. Yes, your faves are just like you. I bet you eat sandwiches too, don't you? And before you eat a sandwich, right, you gotta open that sucker up. Usually it has this wrapping around it, so you gotta breach that so you can get to the real meat and potatoes of the thing. Except I don't think sandwiches typically have potatoes, do they? Mostly bread and meat. Well, it was a pastrami sandwich. And when I opened up this pastrami sandwich, right, undressed it. Oh my. Why did the tomato blush? Because it saw the salad dressing. Okay. But I undressed, the sandwich and I looked upon it. I set my gaze upon it and I noticed, oh, that's an uneven split. That's not half and half. That's not 50-50. It was an unequal half that I was looking at, or unequal halves. Well, Garv, that can't be true because a half is 50. So it's impossible to have unequal halves because then it wouldn't be 50. Okay. Are you done? Can we move? You made your point. Can we move on? Thank you. Okay. But they were unequal parts, we'll call it. And actually, I have a picture of it. I'll put it right here on the screen. This is what the sandwich looked like. You would say that's like a 60-40 split, right? Maybe even a little more. It's like a 65-35. And so I was faced with this dilemma. I was like, well, which half do I start with? Which part do I start with? Excuse me. And I pretty quickly came to an answer. I knew, based on me, my preferences, my actions, my proclivities, I knew which way I was going to go with this feast. But which way would you go? I'm curious. And explain your reasoning. Because I don't know how people make these decisions. I know how I make this decision. I'll explain it to you. But I'm curious, which way would you go with it? Or is it kind of like a no-brainer? Maybe it's like you read, you go left or right. I don't know. Let me know. But the way I thought about it is, well, I got to start with the smaller half, the smaller part. Oh my God, there you go again. See, I make mistakes. Again, relatable, just like you. But I started with the smaller part because I realized, oh yeah, I don't know if you struggle with this, but when I get into a meal, there's always kind of a question of if I'm even going to finish. Now, I don't have a problem finishing, right? But when you eat, typically that's how you start, right? It's not how you finish. That's something else. But usually when I enter into a meal, I'm like, I don't know if I'll make it to the end of this, right? So I have to be very strategic. I have to go about this a certain way. And I realize, oh yeah, if I start with the smaller part, by the time I get to the bigger part, I'll still have an appetite, right? I will start that bigger part. And then if I start it, right, they say the hardest part is starting. If I start the bigger part, I will probably finish it. Because once you get into it, then you're like, oh, I'll just see this thing through. But if I start with the bigger part, by the time I get to the end of that, I'll already be kind of full. And then I'll look at that smaller part and be like, well, I don't need to eat just that little amount, right? I'm already pretty full. But if I start with the smaller part, I'll still set myself up to parlay this appetite into another part of the sandwich. And then I'll get started and I'll probably finish it. So that's how I went about it. And I did finish it. I'm proud to, thank you. I know we're in award season right now. And I would just like to pat myself on the back and say I did finish the sandwich. So I'm happy to report that. We are very happy together. And I see a bright future for us. Even though we're probably not together anymore, are we? Because we probably parted ways by now. It's been a few days. And I have healthy bowel movements. Hello. I would like to know, how do you go about your sandwich eating ways if they do not split it right down the middle and give you two equal halves? Let me know. Last week, I was in London. Great segue. Yeah, it was natural, wasn't it? But yeah, last week I was in London. When this podcast episode came out last week, I was in London. You probably noticed that because the episode came out right on time. That's right, it was a scheduled post. I made sure of that because I don't want to leave you guys without an episode, right? We've been doing so well. I think maybe this is the 40th week in a row. I got to keep that streak going. So I got you that episode last week. I hope you enjoyed it. Numbers didn't show it. No. No, make sure you like these videos. Remember, just leave a like when you get into these episodes. Just leave it by the door. I'll take care of it for you, right? It's a real coat check thing. But then it's a coat you never have to worry about again, right? You don't even have to save your ticket. You can just go on. And coats, that's a very topical thing to bring up, but we'll get to it. Okay? I don't want to just spoil you right at the beginning. And when I came back from this London vacation, right, I left out of San Francisco, SFO, went to London, came back. to SFO, right? Because that's where my car was. And I took a picture of this Cybertruck in San Francisco and I posted it on my Instagram story, right? You guys probably saw it if you follow me on Instagram. And I am displeased to announce that, yeah, many of you asked me, oh my God, did you buy a Cybertruck? No. Why would you think that? How dare it? I'm insulted, frankly. Yes, who's Frank? Lee. Sounds like a fine swell fellow. Fellow swallow? Swallow fellow. Frankly, I'm insulted. Because if you listen to this podcast, you know I would never do that shit. I openly bash Cybertrucks. There are like multiple, I've been making those vertical videos, putting them on all the platforms, right? Make sure you like those if you see them. But I've been making those vertical videos. There's like 5 of them, just me bashing Cybertrucks. And still, the gall, the absolute temerity to come my way with the query that I perhaps maybe bought a Cybertruck. How dare you? Do you have a mirror? Please go check yourself, right? Take a cold, hard look in one of those suckers, because that's fucked up what you did to me by putting me in that position, okay? I wouldn't own a Cybertruck, ever. I don't care. I don't care how cool it gets. I'm not going to buy one. It's just the principle of the thing, right? Also, I'm not that liquid. Why? I mean, actually, I should be, right? It's a compliment that people would even be like, oh, he can. It's not a question of if he can afford it. It's a question of if he did it. And he probably did, knowing him. And that's what I take issue with. But thank you for thinking I can even afford that. I don't even know how much they are, right? I have like the reverse problem. You know how rich people don't know how much milk costs? I don't know how much like rich shit costs. How much is a fucking Cybertruck? I don't know. I couldn't even begin to like fathom what that costs. Because in my eyes, anything above $5 is too much. I'm not going to buy one of those things. But many people, right? My DMs were flooded. And by that, I mean like 6 people DM me. But that's a lot. Think about it. Have you ever been in a situation where, 6 people uniquely, individually reach out to you being like, did you buy a Cybertruck? That, right? Anything more than 1 is a lot. So 6, that's a whole crowd. And a whole crowd of people, I would call it a riot, right? Because they came to me with ill intent, asking me if I bought a Cybertruck. How dare you? What do I look like to you, huh? A fucking loser? Don't answer that. Don't answer that. But yeah, that was posted on my Instagram story because I just had come back from London that day. And London was great. I went there. I have to say, they totally duped me. Did you know that the London Bridge doesn't look cool? It's like a normal ass bridge. You know the song, right? London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. London Bridge is falling down, my fair lady. You know that song? You would think, oh yeah, it's a cool bridge, right? If it's so ubiquitous, so renowned. No, it looks like a normal ass bridge you would see anywhere. But then right across from it is the Tower Bridge. I think that's what everyone thinks that the London Bridge is. And they wouldn't be wrong, right? It is a bridge in London. It's not the London Bridge, but it's a London Bridge. And that was a running bit I did the whole vacation. I would always tell my sister, I'm like, isn't that crazy? Wow, we're on the London Bridge. And she's like, that's not what this is. I'm like, wow. This is the one from the song, right? She's like, nope. I'm like, yeah, and it makes sense because it's so cool. And she's like, shut up. But yeah, that's just my little thing, right? I don't care if anyone else is laughing because it's for me. That's the thing you gotta do when you tell jokes. You gotta make sure you're doing them for yourself. This is just me coping because I can't make other people laugh. So I'm saying, no, the intended audience, it's always hitting. I got 100% hit rate. That's not even true. I feel like a lot of times I tell a joke that I'm like, that's not funny. I remember one time I told someone a joke and we were close enough. We are close enough. Actually, his birthday is today. Happy birthday, Abe. But I remember I told him a joke and he was like, dude, I love you. I think you are funny. You're objectively funny. What you just said, that joke, not funny. I'm like, okay, well, okay. I was like, I know that. I think a lot of the times when I say stuff, it's not because it's funny, even though I just said that's why I say stuff. But no, a lot of time I say stuff not because it's funny. It's just I see a certain angle or a certain pun or a certain in on something, and I'm like, I'll take it. I don't think it's going to pay off, but I'll take it. Yeah. And that's what you have to do. You got to take big swings, right? Risk. But the thing is, you gotta understand, I don't think a lot of what I say is funny. Like, if I listen back to what I say, I might laugh because I'm like, I thought of that. Why? But like, it doesn't make me laugh out loud. And look at that, we relate on even more. You and I, we both don't laugh at my jokes. But the London Bridge and Tower Bridge, right? They really dupe me. You would think the Tower Bridge, here, I'll put a picture. Look, and look how close they are. The London Bridge, right? It's just right across. I think it's 1 kilometer away. That's something also I noticed. I got off the plane. We're going down the freeway or whatever they call it, right? I can't even come up with a fun name. But I saw a sign and it said like, oh, an exit is 800 yards away. And I was like, oh, no. Oh, you're doing it. Isn't it funny when you see like another culture like do something that's so specific to their culture and you're like, oh, look, you're doing it. You're doing it. What was the other thing I saw? Oh yeah, right when we got off the plane and we were at baggage claim, I saw this guy drinking a Coke out of a plastic bottle. And it was one of the plastic bottles, right, where the lid doesn't come off or the cap doesn't come off. You're probably like, what the fuck are you talking about, Garb? Look up like European or like British plastic bottles. The way they work is that you unscrew them normally, but then they're attached still to the cap. They don't come off. I think the reason is like so you don't lose it, or maybe it has to do with like littering or something. But yeah, their caps don't come off. And I fucking hate it, right? I had the equivalent of a chocolate Nesquik, chocolate milk. It's called a Yazoo. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But yeah, it had one of those caps that doesn't come off. And it was pissing me off, right? It doesn't come off, but it's pissing me off. It's making my cap pop off. But the problem with it is that, yes, it's just sitting there. And you know how caps sometimes have a little bit of liquid in them? So when you tilt that back, maybe like a dribble of it will fall onto you and you're like, oh, fuck. Now I got a sticky cheek. Not going to take that anywhere. But yeah, it just gets in your way. And then sometimes, right, when you tilt it back, sometimes the cap slaps you in the cheek or gets on your nose, right, if you have one as big as I can't tell a lie or else I won't be able to drink plastic bottled drinks in Europe, right, if it gets any bigger. But it's funny seeing stuff like that happen because you're like, oh, it's happening. And you're like, you sound like a fucking idiot if you say it out loud because you're like, yeah, that's how people operate, right? Kind of like when you hear an Australian say mate, you're like, oh, you did the thing. You did the thing. And then I'm sure they're like, yeah, it's like whenever we see an American eat a burger. I'm like, all right, easy. I don't like it when you do it back to me. That's, I can only dish it. I can't take it. But the London Bridge and Tower Bridge, right? They do weird stuff over there. I mean, they're the same people that put U's in their words, right? Like in Europe, they put U's in words. But in America, I guess we're weird too. We put I's in everything. See, that's a joke about individualism. That's not funny. That's not funny, but I saw the angle and I took it. You can't blame me for that, can you? I also saw Abbey Road. Are you familiar with the Beatles album? Is the album called Abbey Road? Anyways, the cover art for that album is them walking down Abbey Road, right? It's the famous picture. Everyone knows what it is, even if you don't know what the Beatles are. But we got to see Abbey Road, and I don't want to be one of those people. You know, I really don't like when people do this. When you see a thing that's like known as like a cool thing, and then you go and you say, this isn't cool. But I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it wasn't cool. I'm saying I didn't find it cool. Okay? It's a very different thing. I appreciate greatness. I just know when it doesn't apply to me, right? I saw Abbey Road. I was like, oh, this is cool. But I don't think I have like a very close relationship with the Beatles, even though now this will mark the 3rd episode, I think, in a row where I brought up Paul McCartney for some reason, right? Oh, we hit a combo breaker. I bet if I do it one more time, Paul's going to pop out of nowhere and sing Yellow Submarine yesterday. And then he's going to be like, hey, Jude. That's all I got. I don't remember any. A hard day's night, and I've been working like a log. In 2nd grade, I went to an elementary school where we had a music program, and they would make us do, for some reason, like a musical or like a play every year. And I remember when I was in 2nd grade, they made us do a Beatles performance, and each class it was a private school, so it was just one class per grade level. So each grade level, right, each class, they had to perform one song, and we had to do that one, whatever the name of that song is. Is it Hard Day's Night, right? And I've been working like a log. We had to do that one. And I can't appreciate Abbey Road, how dare I? But that's the distinction I want to make. I understand it's cool, right? I understand why it is such an interesting thing, but I did notice a stark difference in my appreciation for it. Because I was like, oh, I'm like so not connected to this thing that this just feels so normal. But I can see why people go to this and they're like, oh, this is the place. Oh my goodness. And you can even see it, right? That it was such a populated crosswalk. There were so many people there taking photos. You know, I saw so many husbands, you know, yelling at their wives, being like, come on, hurry up. I want to go home and watch football. Or, well, it's Europe. So they were probably like, come on, hurry up. I want to go home and watch football. It's a different sport over there, but it's the same. Yeah, no, it sounds the same, but it's soccer is what I'm talking about. Soccer. Yeah, look, you sound like an American. Go home and eat your burgers and watch soccer. All right, easy. Jeez. Lay off. Don't go hard on me, man. You bloke. That's another one. That's a good one. But we watched, I think the first day we were there, right, we got in and it was a Friday. I believe it was 10 a.m., 11 a.m. maybe when we got there. So we had a full day, right? Slept on the plane, 10-hour flight, slept all the way there, and then we had a full day. That didn't stop me. I was still passing out every chance I got. Fell asleep, I think, in the Uber. Or, see, I was gonna make a stupid joke and be like, or as they call it, the Uber. I'm like, but that's not even, is that how they pronounce it, guy? No, it's not. So what was that? It's not funny. Hello. Then why is it making you laugh? I don't know. Don't come for me like that, man. Trust me, Gauruv, no one's coming for you. All right. I thought you said you didn't have any problem with finishing. I can finish as long as you start, right? That's why I eat the 35% first. We're getting away from the point. We watched Phantom of the Opera. Definitely fell asleep during that, but it was my first time seeing it. Oh my God, iconic soundtrack. And when you get in, right, security, they got to check your bags. And before we had gotten in there, right, we had stopped at a donut place, picked up a donut. My sister bought some Pop Mart, what do you call those? Fuck, what are they called? Fubos? No, fuck, what are they called? The little guys. You get them from Pop Mart. I'm tapped in, I promise. But they're the little angry looking furry dudes. Damn it. I'll put a picture here just so you can see that. I know what I'm talking about. I just forgot the name of them. It's right on the tip of my tongue. It's like on the roof of my mouth at this point. I don't know. Fuck. That's going to annoy the shit out of me. Anywho, they checked our bags and they saw the donut and they were like, all right, so just make sure you don't eat it, okay? You just got to promise me that. If you get in there, don't eat it. And I was like, oh yeah, I always forget. Security and like, you know, clearance outside of the US is always so chill. Like even at the airport, I noticed it coming back into the US, it is always such a difference. Like even getting into London, when you go through the airport, right? You're going internationally, so you got to show them your passport, but you don't even have to talk to someone when you get into London. It's just you scan it in this, like you ever been to New York and you go on the subway, or if you go to London, you take the tube, you just scan like your card or your phone, right? You just got to pay the $2 or whatever, £2. Sterlings, I don't fucking, it's pounds, right? Is that what I was using? I'm pretty sure. But you scan the thing, it just looks like that, right? One of those little gates. Like when you enter an amusement park, it's like one of those. That's what you go through when you enter customs. And then there's like a security guard waiting way down there, so I'm sure if you have any problems, he'll probably step in. But it's all automated, right? You don't have to talk to a person. You don't have to go through that grueling process, you know, where you show them your passport and they're like, why are you here? I'm like, well, you can see I live here. They're like, yeah, but why are you coming back? I'm like, what? Isn't that what you want me to do? I don't think I can be out there for an extended period of time. I'm just returning home. They're like, yeah, but why? I'm like, hey, if I'm not wanted, just tell me that, okay? I can take a hint, but just can you be a little more explicit? Because I'm not that good at taking hints. Me when a girl's into me. So you do or you don't want? If it would help right? And then let's say in the name of communication, you just tell me what you're feeling. Can you meet me in the middle, right? Can you meet me in the middle of that sandwich and come 65% my way and just tell me what you're feeling? I feel like that will be better for both parties. But it fucking sucks coming back to the US when you go through US like TSA and security because it feels like an interrogation and I didn't do anything wrong. Oh yeah, why are you saying that? Sounds like you did. I'm like, fuck, did I do something wrong? Maybe when I was in the gift shop, did some like pair of glasses fall into my bag and now I can't get drafted by an NBA team? Shout out Jello, you know, I might hit that, bend that corner, swerve, bend that corner. Whoa. Anyways, when I came back into the US, right, you go through London security first, and the guy was so nice, right? You go through the thing where you put your hands up like this, and he's like, oh yeah, anything in the pockets? I'm like, no, all good. And then I go through, and he's like, I'm just going to check your pocket real quick. He was like, these things, very sensitive. They're going to pick up on every little thing. And I forgot, oh shoot, stupid me. You'd think I would know better. There was a gum wrapper in my back pocket, and he was like, oh, no worries. He was like, those things, they pick up every little thing, so just throw that away, you're good to go. Whereas if you were in the US, they'd be like, sir, can you step aside for a second? What gives you the fucking right to think you can come in here posing a goddamn threat? What's the wrapper from? I'm like, gum? They're like, he said gun! Get him! No, but they're very chill because they're like, no, we get it. Yeah. Then the US, it fucking, I mean, but we did it to ourselves, right? We like acted out and then we get punished and we're like, hey, what's this? And they're like, what? You did this, right? It's like when that kid growing up in class would always misbehave and then the teacher's like, you can't go to recess. And he's like, oh, what the fuck? This is so unfair. I'm like, don't act like you just threw a pencil at someone, right? And then chewed up spitballs and spit them at people. This is your doing. This is the consequences of your own actions. You were hoisted by your own petard. Sir, don't act distraught if you were the one disrupting. We need to move on. I have a lot to talk about. We only have about 8 minutes left. Oh no. But I also saw a bunch of street performers and I was like, oh, they're very good, as street performers are. But I got to thinking, what if there were bad street performers? Like just purposely bad. Like these street performers, they were doing the thing where they spin these big metal plates or like bowls, you know, plates with the kind of higher ends. They were spinning these big metal dishes on both of their fingers, and then they had a stick coming out of their mouth, and they were spinning it on there too. And I was like, oh yeah, look at that. But imagine if there was a street performer that did that and just it never worked. Like even trying to set up on one finger, it just keeps dropping and clanging. And then if you've ever seen, right, you've been to a city and seen street performers. I didn't see this in London, but I see this a lot in San Francisco. And I remember when I went to the East Coast, I feel like I saw this. Street performers love to jump over people, especially kids, right? They always have to like start with a few adults and then they fill in the sides with kids because they're really just jumping over the adults, right? The kids are there just to increase body count so you can see like, oh, look, I jumped over 7 people. And you're like, yeah, but 5 of them were 7. They're like, shut up, put some money in this hat and say you enjoyed the show. I'm like, yes, I enjoyed the show. Sorry. I'm sorry. Could you do what we do? No, I can't. I don't know. I'm so critical. I'm sorry. I overstep my bounds. But imagine if there was a bad street performer and he charges at the group and he doesn't even clear one kid. Like he takes a knee straight to that kid's fucking chin. That kid's chin is up near his forehead, you know? I was like, oh, that's a really good, like if I ever write a sketch, I'm like, that has to be one of them. Just a really bad street performer. But for some reason, the entire time the crowd's like, no. But the next one, he'll get the next one. And he never does. They also ask about allergies all the time over there. Every time you start a meal, they'll take your order and they'll always go, yep, we'll get that right out for you. Oh, by the way, is any allergies at the table? I'm like, oh, that's very accommodating. That's nice. Whereas in the US, they're kind of like, hey, you ordered what you ordered. It's out of our hands at that point. Okay, we're going to bring you some stuff between you and God. Okay? That's the end of our interaction. Okay? I know like 40% of you are like allergic to nuts, but this might have nuts in it. It might not. I don't fucking know. Whereas in, yeah, London, everyone's like, yeah, you got allergies, you should let us know. We don't want to kill you. We just want to give you a good meal. And it was without fail. Every single place we went to always asked, any allergies? Any allergies, by the way? I feel like if you did that in the US, some people would be like, oh, well, what's it to you? Why do you need to know? I'm like, you know what? I'm going to bring you some shit that I don't think you're allergic to, but a lot of people are. So let's play our chances, huh? Let's play some fucking roulette, you piece of shit. Anywho, the real meat and potatoes of this episode, right? I'll get into in the last 5 minutes. Is that I figured out why everyone in London is so fashionable. Have you heard this or like do you know this idea? In London, right? I feel like on Instagram and social media really, you see a lot of like fit pics coming out of like Paris and London, places like that. And they're like these fashion hubs, I would say, of the world. A lot of time, right, you hear like Paris and New York being like the top places for fashion. And I feel like London, right, by proxy, it's kind of like another version of that. It's funny because when I was in London, I was so heavily reminded of New York. I'm like, oh, this is literally just New York with like older style architecture. Like when you go to New York, everything's made of metal and windows. And when you go to London, yes, everything's like big and tall and might be metal, but there's a lot of like older European architecture and it's in the same exact setup. Like the streets feel the exact same as the streets in New York. And so it's crazy. I'm like, oh yeah, these places, these cities are very fashionable. And I'm like, but why does London feel especially so? It feels slightly more elevated than in New York. And I was like, oh, I got it. I was like, it's the coats. Everyone there wears coats because it's so fucking cold. And so it's out of necessity, but then it turns into an aesthetic, doesn't it? It's kind of like Gore-Tex stuff, or like, what is it? Gorpcore? Is that what it's called? It's where you wear like outdoor shit, like Arc'teryx, but it's like you don't go outside. It's turned into an aesthetic when it was really just originally for utility. And I'm like, oh, London's fashion and style comes out of utility, but they kind of put that shit on, you know? Alternative caption for my Instagram post, if you haven't seen it, go like the Instagram post. But alternative caption was going to be London. I was in it. But I was like, I don't speak like Yoda, so that doesn't actually make sense. And then another caption, I was like, oh, I should have said, Lund on, got that shit on, hard on. I was like, well, that's okay. That I shouldn't say that on main, should I? That's, yeah, I shouldn't put that out there. But yes, they got that shit on in London, and it's because everyone wears coats. And if you look deeper, a lot of people have abysmal fucking fits. Like I saw this guy with very, very tight, like blue chinos, or like, you know, those blue pants that people wear to the office. He was wearing blue pants and like a mustard V-neck sweater, but then he had a brown coat over it. I was like, oh yeah. Yeah, he's got that shit on, man. When in reality, yeah, those tight-ass pants and that yellow sweater, you look like a popsicle. You know those popsicles that have the two sticks coming out of them? Imagine, yeah, a yellow popsicle with two blue sticks wrapped in a brown wrapper. That's what he looked like. But he still, yeah, he was kind of putting that on. I was like, oh yes, it's the coat effect. But I'm like, but why these coats? What is it about these coats specifically? And I looked around and I noticed, oh my God, there's not a fucking logo in sight. Went to the Buckingham Palace, right? To see the changing of the guards. They do this, I think, 3 times a week or something. It's a whole big event, right? Lasts about an hour, hour and a half. Or at least that's like how long you stand there so you can get a good spot to see it. You know, they play some music with a marching band and then they switch out the guard. And during that, you know, I look around and I see hundreds of people and I'm like, oh my God, I don't see a single logo. And what made me realize that is when we were driving there, I saw one guy with a sweatshirt and I was like, oh, is that like it looked like a college sweatshirt from the US. It wasn't, but it had writing on the front, just like a lot of college sweatshirts you see. And I was like, oh my God, I forgot. I'm so used to seeing those all around the US, but here that kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. He's like the one in a few hundred of people that have writing on their clothes. And I was like, that's what it is. It's the minimalist thing, right? It's that quiet luxury that kind of makes people pop off. It's like when they're wearing a coat, but then you ask them like, oh, nice coat. And they're like, yeah, it's $9,000. And you're like, oh, okay. Did they put the entire Burlington coat factory in that coat? Like, what the fuck? Why is it $9,000? But I noticed, yeah, there's no logos. It's just coats. The only logo you're going to see is when people are wearing like a jacket, and it's North Face. North Face is the only logo you're going to see in London. I'm like, and that's where we kind of miss in the States, right? Every fucking thing has a logo on it. And that's why it looks not trashy, but it doesn't look as like elevated as it could be. Like, you could still have a logo under a coat, but we let that shit be on full display, right? You'll see a kid in a Fortnite shirt, a Travis Scott shirt, a Godzilla shirt, and it's one kid with one shirt. All three of those fucking things are on one shirt somehow. We're like walking advertisements. Whereas over there, it's like, yeah, you just put some jeans on and a coat and you look good as shit. Well, in good shit. They got that good shit on. I say shit as a term of endearment. I made a mistake before. So some people have like cooked for me and then they're like, how was it? I'm like, oh, this is some good shit. They're like, well, I don't love that you called my food shit. I'm like, no, but fuck, I'm sorry. I know I should be more intelligent with my words, but you have to understand that's a very high compliment from me. They're like, oh yeah, I'll keep that in mind. Last two things I'll say is that Paddington has fucking motion over there, okay? Every gift shop you go into, Paddington is riddled on the shelves. Motherfucker is everywhere. People love that little fucker, that little bear. Also, Mr. Bean. There's a few Mr. Bean Beanie Babies that you always see. So yeah, Paddington, but he's got some motion over there. That's like their Kobe, you know? And then speaking of jackets, you know, I got this fit on. This is one of the fits I was throwing over there. And I was in line and a girl actually asked me, yes, she said, excuse me, where's your coat from? I was like, oh, it's from Zara. And then she was like, oh my goodness, thank you. She's like, it's just lovely. And I was like, oh, wow. That's enough to fuel me for like 7 months. Just hearing that, by the way. Having a girl say like something I'm wearing is lovely. Oh, lovely is amazing. Even if they're like, oh, it looks good. That'll carry me for 3 months, but lovely. Oh, I love the way they use words over there. I was watching a YouTube channel. I think it's called the Try Channel or something. It's where they have Irish people try stuff. And I watched all the episodes where they try alcohol, and I love the way they talk about alcohol. They'll take a sip of the fucking hardest liquor you've ever smelled, ever tasted. And then they'll say some shit like, oh, that was gorgeous. I'm like, what? They'll say like, oh, that was lovely. Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, that's gorgeous. I'm like, that's alcohol. But I love it. I loved it almost as much as she loved my coat or my jacket. I need a coat if I want to be throwing some fits. And I hope you throw a like towards this video. Because again, I don't know what's going on. Our numbers, we're falling short on the numbers. I know a lot of you we're going over a little bit here, but I know a lot of people are new since maybe I talked about this. I talked about this in the first episode of this podcast. Doing this podcast as a single man that is 26, I have stock. I am intentionally shooting my stock in the foot by doing a solo podcast at 26 as a single man. So the only way that this can be semi worth it, it won't even make up the difference, it'll just soften the blow, is if this is successful. So I'm willing to take a hit on my stock. I'm willing to put this product out there as long as can you please like it and comment, because I need that. I can't be going around here being a guy with a podcast, you know, with only a few hundred listeners. We got to get this thing up there. Okay. So buy a coat, elevate your style, leave a like, elevate this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Appreciate the support as always. And I will talk to you next week. Okay?